How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Boylei Hobby Time. Today I'm making a diorama with this dragon. The box says this is a red dragon, but it looks kind of gray to me. I suppose it could be a very desaturated red, but then that begs the question, is a fully desaturated red still considered red? I don't think so. Either way, I'm going to be painting it gold because I already have a red dragon, and I wanted to try something new. After assembling the dragon, I got out a round plaque and a pre-cut foam disc that matched the size of the top. This looked like the right size for the dragon to not take up too much space on the base, but also not appear too small either. Off camera, I took the base outside and cut a hole for the batteries and the switch, and I routed a path for the wiring. The cuts were definitely not perfect, and I oriented the switch the wrong way the first time round, so I'll have to go back and fix that off camera, but the battery housing fit nice and snug, so I was pretty happy about that. On top of the styrofoam, I wanted to build up some terrain to make the diorama a little bit more visually interesting. I used XPS foam for more detailed terrain because it's more dense and tends not to create as much of a mess. It's far easier to control than styrofoam. I chipped and ripped away at the foam to create a more natural and rugged rock texture around the edges as they sloped down toward the bottom of the diorama. I also added a few smaller standalone rocks at the bottom as well. I then glued the foam layers together, and to make sure this dragon had a nice secure place to stand, I drilled a hole in its base and I anchored a metal rod into the foam. I made sure it was nice and snug by gluing it into the base with plenty of foam-safe superglue. I continued detailing the rocks around the base and added a little ramp for one of our heroes to run up toward the dragon. After I was happy with the state of the base, it was time to cover the foam with some protective pastes. First, I mixed up a batch of Sculptamold. I used it to build up and add variation to all the flat areas. It's easy to manipulate and fine-tune after it's been put in place. I then mixed up a batch of plaster paint and Mod Podge, which I watered down to a brushable consistency, made sure to work it into all of the cracks, and cover the remainder of the exposed foam. These pastes add texture and will help protect the foam from the spray paint later on. As the mix dried and got a little thicker, I used it to frost the outside like a cake, and I smoothed it out with IPA and my gloved hand. Next, I cleaned up my hobby mat, I got out an old hobby mat, and I got ready to paint. I then grabbed my little red dragon, I took it outside, I used a spray can, and I primed it black. I'm painting this dragon very similarly to my first dragon, and I started by throwing on the base colors with an airbrush. Like I said at the beginning, I wanted this dragon to be painted gold. I knew it was going to be breathing golden fire, and I wanted to make sure the color matched. As you can probably tell by the expression on this dragon's face, this is not a friendly dragon. Unlike Puff, Figment, or Pete's dragon, this dragon will assault you. It will eat you and your horse, move into your house, take all your belongings including your gold and cryptocurrency, and it will not report any of it as income on its taxes. If you ever cross paths with this type of dragon in the wild, be sure to run away, unless you're there to perform an audit or you're trained to slay dragons. After applying all the airbrushed colors, I switched to a brush to paint the teeth, horns, tongue, claws, and eyes. After that, the dragon was done. Off camera, I primed the base as well as the two heroes of this diorama that I made using Hero Forge. I decided to paint the heroes before the base. I attempted some form of non-metallic metal, but definitely need more practice, so I'm not going to be talking about the painting while I paint these. Instead, I'm going to talk about these two heroes. Their names are Lucas and Gianna. They were on their way to the top of their favorite mountain for a picnic where Lucas was planning on proposing. Unfortunately, they were interrupted by this pesky tax-evasive dragon. They may not be licensed to perform an audit on the dragon, but they are both trained in dragon slaying, and they work well as a team, so it shouldn't take them much time at all to beat the dragon. Then they can get back to their picnic and Lucas can pop the question. You'll see their strategy for taking out the dragon in just a minute. After both of the heroes were painted, I moved on to the base. I layered on some yellows, greens, and blues, and I tried to give the rocks a little more life and color using this technique. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I finally topped it off with an almost white tan, and then I dry brushed on a pure white to catch just the finest edges. Next, I put the dragon into its special spot and I put both of our heroes into position. Lucas is distracting the dragon and deflecting a blast of fire with his flame-resistant shield, while Gianna has climbed up the little rock spire and is jumping through the air to poke the dragon in the head. Textbook move, works every time. To illuminate the fire, I used a straight LED filament that I embedded into a hole that I drilled in the back of the dragon's mouth. I left the upper jaw piece unglued to this point to make this part easier. I ran both the positive and negative leads through a little hole in the base that I drilled behind Lucas's foot. I ran the positive lead from the batteries to the switch, and then I ran from the switch to the filament, and then I completed the circuit by running the negative wire from the filament back to the batteries. I made sure to check my circuit before fixing the diorama to the wooden base. I then added some polyfiber cotton around the bulb to give it some volume and a little more flame-like appearance. I finished the look by making it most billowy right next to the shield. I then darkened the areas that were the furthest from the source of the light with an airbrush, and the last thing to do was to paint the sides of the diorama with black 3.0. After that, I called it good. That is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Huge shout out as always to my patrons. You guys are the best. Have an awesome week, everyone. I'll see you next time.